Life has a funny way of teaching people lessons about kindness. Sometimes, those lessons come wrapped in rose petals and wedding veils. I never planned to become successful out of spite. The empire I built started with a simple love of flowers and a tiny shop that could barely pay its rent. But watching my brother Marcus stand in my office today, his perfect composure cracking as he realizes just how much power I hold over his flawless wedding plans. Well, I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel like poetic justice. Let me take you back to where it all began. 10 years ago, I was 22 and had just graduated with a business degree my parents had pushed me into. Flowers won't pay the bills, Andrea, Dad would say at every family dinner, while Mom nodded in agreement. Look at your brother, he's going to law school. That's a real career. Marcus, their golden child, never missed a chance to remind me how much better his life choices were. Still playing with flowers, little sister? He'd smirk, adjusting his expensive tie. I guess someone has to make the bouquets for my future law firm's lobby. But I had a dream, and more importantly, I had a plan. While everyone thought I was just arranging centerpieces in my tiny shop, I was studying the wedding industry from the inside out. Every bride who walked through my door taught me something new about what was missing in our city's luxury event market. The turning point came during my first year of business. I was working late one night, finishing an elaborate wedding arch of white roses and orchids, when Eleanor Brunswick walked into my shop. To most people, she was just another wealthy widow, but I knew her as the owner of the historic Brunswick Manor, the most sought-after wedding venue in the city. "Young lady," she said, eyeing my work with an intensity that made me nervous, "who taught you to arrange flowers like that?" I straightened my back, still holding a half-finished bouquet. "No one, Mrs. Brunswick. I taught myself." She circled the arch slowly, examining every detail. "Do you know how many florists I've worked with at my venue over the years?" "I imagine quite a few," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hundreds." She turned to face me. "And none of them understood balance and flow the way you do. How would you like to be our exclusive floral provider?" That opportunity changed everything. Working at Brunswick Manor gave me access to the city's elite. I listened to their complaints about venue limitations, their struggles coordinating vendors, their wishes for more comprehensive wedding packages. Every weekend, I observed how the venue operated, noted its inefficiencies, and quietly began forming a bigger vision. What none of them knew, not Mrs. Brunswick, not my family, not even my few employees, was that I was living on ramen noodles and working 18-hour days, saving every penny. My tiny apartment above the flower shop became my war room, its walls covered with business plans and property listings. The first major purchase came 2 years later, when Mrs. Brunswick decided to retire. Everyone expected her son to take over the manor, but he had no interest in the wedding business. I still remember his dismissive tone when I approached him about buying it. "You? The florist?" He laughed, actually laughed in my face. "And how exactly would you finance that?" I slid the bank statements and business plan across the table. His laughter died as he read through the numbers. "By living minimally and reinvesting every profit, plus some strategic early investments in tech stocks, I had accumulated enough for a substantial down payment. The rest came from a business loan backed by my shop's proven track record." The day I signed the papers for Brunswick Manor, I invited my family to dinner. I can still picture their faces when I told them I'd bought it. "Bought what?" Marcus asked, barely looking up from his phone. "A new delivery van." "Brunswick Manor," I said calmly, taking a sip of water. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. Mom's hand flew to her throat. Marcus started laughing, then stopped when he saw I wasn't joking. "That's impossible," he sputtered. "That place is worth millions." I pulled out the deed and placed it on the table. 7.5 million to be exact. "Would you like to see the paperwork?" But you run a flower shop," Mom whispered, as if saying it aloud would make more sense of it. "I run a very successful flower shop," I corrected her, "and now I also own the city's premier wedding venue." Marcus recovered first, his lawyer's mind already calculating. "You must have taken on massive debt. One bad season and you'll lose everything." His concern would have been touching if it weren't so clearly hopeful. "Actually, I've already booked enough weddings for the next 2 years to cover the loan payments. Turns out having inside knowledge of the industry helps with business planning." That was the first crack in their perception of me as the family failure. But it wasn't enough to change how they treated me. Marcus especially seemed determined to minimize my success. Anyone can get lucky once, he'd say at family gatherings. But running a major venue is different from playing with flowers. You'll see. What they didn't see was that I was just getting started. Brunswick Manor became my prototype for what a modern luxury venue could be. I integrated all services, flowers, catering, planning, design, under one roof. Happy brides told their friends, and our booking rates soared. Within 18 months, we were turning away more events than we could host. That's when I made my next move. The historic Hamilton Hotel, just outside the city, had fallen into disrepair. Its owners were looking to sell, but most developers wanted to tear it down for condos. I saw its potential and made an offer. The renovation nearly broke me. For 6 months, I worked around the clock, splitting time between Brunswick Manor, the flower shop, and overseeing construction. I stopped attending family dinners, claiming I was too busy. In reality, I couldn't stand their constant skepticism. I heard that hotel renovation is turning into a money pit, Marcus commented during one of his rare visits to my shop. He was there to order a small bouquet for his girlfriend, making sure to mention he'd made partner at his law firm. You know, if you need legal advice about bankruptcy. I just smiled and handed him his flowers. On a house, brother. Consider it an early wedding gift. He didn't understand my smile then. How could he? He didn't know that I had just signed contracts with 3 major wedding planning companies to make the Hamilton our flagship destination venue. He didn't know that our advance bookings would cover the renovation costs within the first year. And he certainly didn't know about the other properties I was quietly acquiring through holding companies. The Hamilton's grand reopening was a turning point. We hosted a charity gala that attracted every notable family in the city. I made sure my parents and Marcus received invitations, though I didn't specifically tell them I owned the place. Let them think I was just doing the flowers. I watched them arrive, saw their jaws drop at the transformation. The restored ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers. The gardens had been redesigned to create perfect photo opportunities from every angle. And yes, there were flowers everywhere. But these arrangements were works of art that made the architecture sing. Andrea, Mom's voice was uncertain when she found me directing staff near the entrance. You did all the flowers for this event. In a manner of speaking, I smiled, noting her new designer dress. I own the hotel. For once she had nothing to say. Dad stood beside her, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. But Marcus just shook his head. You must have silent partners, he said firmly. There's no way you could manage this alone. I was saved from responding by the event coordinator calling me to handle the situation in the kitchen. As I walked away, I heard Mom say, maybe we should have her do the flowers when you and Jessica finally get married. If only they knew what was coming next. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've acquired 2 more historic properties and turned them into luxury event venues. Each one has its own character, its own target market, but they all operate under my exacting standards. The holding company that owns them all, Rose Petal Properties, has become the dominant force in the city's wedding industry. Not that my family knows any of this. They still think I just got lucky with Brunswick Manor. Marcus still makes little digs about my flower obsession whenever we cross paths. And I still smile and take it all, knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply waiting for the perfect moment. That moment arrived last week when Marcus stormed into my tiny flower shop, his perfect composure shattered. Jessica, his fiancée of 2 months, was in tears behind him. The Belmont just canceled our wedding booking, he announced without preamble. Apparently the new owners are closing it for renovations. We need your help finding a new venue. I looked up from the rose arrangement I was working on, keeping my face carefully neutral. The Belmont? That's unfortunate. When's the wedding? 3 months, Jessica sniffled. We can't postpone. All the other vendors are booked. The invitations are ordered. All the good venues are booked solid, Marcus added, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. But you work with these places all the time. You must know someone who can help. I set down my scissors carefully, savoring the moment. Actually, I might be able to help more directly than you think. Why don't you come up to my office? We should discuss this properly. Your office. Marcus looked around the small shop in confusion. You mean the back room? No, I smiled, picking up my keys. My actual office. It's time you saw where I really work. I led Marcus and Jessica out of the flower shop, locking up behind us. Marcus checked his Rolex impatiently as I guided them toward the gleamy office building next door, the one he'd walked past 100 times without ever really noticing. Andrea, we don't have time for whatever this is, he said, his lawyer voice slipping out. We need to call every venue in the city, not take a tour of wherever you're taking us. I swiped my keycard at the private entrance, holding the door open. Trust me, brother. This is exactly where you need to be. The lobby was all marble and modern art, with a 3-story living wall of exotic plants catching the afternoon light. A security guard nodded respectfully as we passed. Good afternoon, Ms. Mitchell. Marcus's steps faltered. I caught Jessica's wide-eyed look as we entered the private elevator at the back. I pressed my thumb to the biometric scanner, and the elevator began its smooth ascent to the top floor. Andrea, Jessica ventured, her voice small. What exactly do you do? Besides the flower shop, I mean. The elevator doors opened directly into a stunning reception area. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. The walls were adorned with massive photographs, aerial shots of Brunswick Manor, the Hamilton, and all my other properties. Welcome to the headquarters of Rose Petal Properties, I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. We own and operate the city's premier collection of luxury event venues. Marcus stopped dead in his tracks, staring at the photos. His face went through a fascinating series of expressions as realization began to dawn. My assistant Claire appeared with perfect timing. Miss Mitchell, your 3 o'clock with the investors is in 15 minutes. Should I reschedule? No need, Claire. This won't take long. I turned to my brother. Shall we step into my office? My office was my sanctuary, designed to impress without being ostentatious. One wall was entirely glass, offering an even better view than the reception area. Another held a digital display showing real-time booking information for all our venues. The remaining walls featured architectural drawings of historical buildings, our next potential acquisitions. I settled behind my desk, gesturing for them to sit. Marcus remained standing, his lawyer's eyes taking in every detail. He started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. You own all these venues. Every single one. I confirmed, pulling up our portfolio on my tablet. Brunswick Manor, the Hamilton Rose Garden Plaza, the Metropolitan, and as of last week, the Belmont. Jessica gasped. You're the one who canceled our venue? Actually, the Belmont did need renovations. The previous owners let it decline badly. I smiled apologetically. But I was planning to call you today anyway. I have an alternative proposal. I turned my tablet to show them the Hamilton's grand ballroom. As your sister, I'd be happy to offer you the Hamilton instead. It's a significant upgrade from the Belmont, but I'll honor your original pricing. Marcus finally sank into a chair, his composure cracking. How long? He demanded. How long have you been running all this? Remember when you told me anyone could get lucky once after I bought Brunswick Manor? I leaned back in my chair. That was just the beginning. While you were making partner at your firm, I was building this. Every time you mocked my little flower shop, I was signing contracts for another property. But the money? He shook his head. This kind of operation would require millions. 37 million in assets, to be precise, I said quietly. All fully financed and profitable. Turns out playing the flowers can pay quite well if you know what you're doing. Jessica touched Marcus's arm gently. The Hamilton would be perfect, she said. It's much nicer than the Belmont anyway. We should. No, Marcus cut her off, standing abruptly. This is ridiculous. My little sister doesn't run a multi-million-dollar company. This is some kind of elaborate setup. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I pressed a button on my desk phone. Claire, could you bring in the Belmont acquisition papers and the latest financial reports for all properties? You really can't stand it, can you? I asked Marcus while we waited. The idea that your little sister who plays with flowers might actually be more successful than you. I'm a partner in one of the city's top law firms, he shot back. I worked my way up, earned my position. I didn't just get lucky with real estate. I laughed then. I couldn't help it. Oh, Marcus, maybe you should look more carefully at who owns the building your firm leases. The color drained from his face. Claire entered with a stack of documents before he could respond, placing them on my desk with practiced efficiency. The full portfolio overview requested, Ms. Mitchell. Would you like me to postpone the investor meeting? No need, Claire. I think we're almost done here. I pushed the papers toward Marcus. Feel free to review everything. I know how lawyers love their due diligence. His hands shook slightly as he picked up the first document. I watched his face as he read, seeing the moment when it really hit him. Every property, every transaction, every success. It was all there in black and white. Your firm's lease comes up for renewal next month, by the way, I mentioned casually. I've been meaning to discuss that with the partners. Rents in that area have gone up considerably. Jessica, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly stood up. Stop it, both of you. This isn't about your rivalry. This is about our wedding. She turned to me. Andrea, we would be honored to have our wedding at the Hamilton. If the offer still stands. Her sincerity caught me off guard. In all our previous interactions, Jessica had always followed Marcus's lead in treating me with condescending politeness. But now she was looking at me with genuine respect, maybe even a hint of admiration. The offer stands, I said softly, and I'll personally oversee all the arrangements. Jessica, wait, Marcus interjected. We need to think about this. Maybe we should look at other options. What other options, Marcus? She demanded, surprising us both with her forcefulness. Your sister owns the best venues in the city. She's offering us an incredible location at a discount. Why are you fighting this? I watched my brother wrestle with his pride. The Marcus I knew would never admit defeat, would never accept help from his little sister who played with flowers. But the Marcus sitting in my office today was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time. One condition, he said finally, his voice tight. This stays between us. I don't want the family knowing about all this. He gestured vaguely at my office. I thought about all the years of snide comments, the dismissive attitudes, the constant undermining of my choices. Part of me wanted to force him to admit everything to our parents, to make him acknowledge my success publicly. But looking at him now, his perfect image cracked just enough to show the insecurity beneath. I realized I didn't need that anymore. My success spoke for itself, whether they acknowledged it or not. Fine, I agreed. The family can think you're just using my flower shop connection to get a good deal at the Hamilton. But I added, holding his gaze, the mocking stops. No more comments about playing with flowers or getting lucky. He nodded stiffly. Agreed. Jessica practically sagged with relief. Thank you, Andrea. Really. I know this isn't, well, I know things haven't always been great between you two. I stood signaling the end of our meeting. Claire will email you the contract and all the details. We should schedule a proper tour of the Hamiltons soon. I paused, then added with just a hint of sisterly sweetness. And don't worry about the law firm's lease, Marcus. I'm sure we can work something out. They left in a daze, Jessica already chattering about color schemes that would work in the Hamiltons' ballroom. Through my office windows, I watched them exit the building and walk past my little flower shop, Marcus's head turning for one last look up at where I stood. Claire appeared in my doorway. The investors are ready for you, Ms. Mitchell. And she hesitated. Your parents called again. They want to know if you'll be at Sunday dinner this week. I smiled, turning away from the window. Tell them I'll be there. I think it's time for a few changes at the family dinner table. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had always followed the same script for years. Mom would cook her signature roast, Dad would brag about Marcus's latest legal victories, and I would sit quietly, pushing food around my plate while enduring subtle digs about my career choices. But tonight was different. I could feel it the moment I walked through the door, carrying a bottle of wine that cost more than my first month's rent at the flower shop. Marcus and Jessica were already there, seated in the living room. My brother couldn't quite meet my eyes, while Jessica kept shooting me nervous smiles. Mom emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Andrea, sweetie, we were starting to think you wouldn't come. You've been so busy lately with that shop of yours. I handed her the wine, noting how her eyebrows rose at the label. Actually, Mom, I've been busy with a lot more than just the shop. Oh, she examined the bottle more closely. This is very expensive, dear. You shouldn't have. I wanted to. I smiled, moving past her into the kitchen. Need any help? The kitchen was exactly as I remembered, the same yellow walls, the same family photos arranged on the windowsill. Most of them featured Marcus, his law school graduation, his first day at the firm, his partnership ceremony. The only photo of me was from high school, before I disappointed them by choosing flowers over finance. Jessica was just telling us about the wedding plans, Mom said, checking the roast. She says you helped them book the Hamilton. I didn't know you had connections there. I caught Marcus's warning glance from the doorway. He kept his word about not revealing my true role, but something in me had shifted. I was tired of hiding, tired of being the family disappointment. Actually, Mom, I did more than just help them book it. I leaned against the counter, watching her face. I own it. The roasting pan clattered against the oven rack as she spun around. You what? Andrea, Marcus started, but I held up my hand. No, Marcus, no more hiding. I raised my voice slightly. Dad, could you come in here for a minute? Dad appeared in the doorway, looking confused. What's going on? I have something to tell you both. I took a deep breath. You might want to sit down. Over the next 15 minutes, I laid it all out, Brunswick Manor, the Hamilton, all of it. I showed them photos on my phone of my office, the properties, the financial reports. With each revelation, their expressions shifted from disbelief to shock to something that looked almost like awe. But how? Dad kept asking. Where did you get the money to start all this? I saved everything I earned from the flower shop. Lived on nothing, invested carefully. I met his eyes. Turns out all those business classes you made me take came in handy after all. Mom had sunk into a kitchen chair, the roast forgotten. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. You couldn't even believe in my flower shop. Every success I had, you treated like a lucky break that wouldn't last. We were worried about you, she protested weakly. We just wanted you to have a stable career, like Marcus. I am stable, Mom. I'm more than stable. I pulled out my phone, bringing up the company's latest valuation. Rose Petal Properties is worth more than the law firm Marcus works at. And speaking of that, I glanced at my brother, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. I own their building. Dad's coffee cup hit the saucer with a sharp clink. You own the Anderson building, yes, along with several other commercial properties downtown. I straightened up. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you both. I'm expanding the business, moving into corporate event spaces. I could use someone with experience in contract law. Marcus's head snapped up. What are you saying? I'm saying, brother dear, that I'm offering you a job. Chief Legal Officer for Rose Petal Properties. Full control of your department, better salary than your current partnership, and I smiled. No more lease negotiations to worry about. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. Dad stared at his coffee cup like it might hold some explanation for how his children's expected roles had suddenly reversed. Jessica, who had been quiet until now, broke the tension with a laugh. Oh my God, Marcus, take the job. Do you know what people would give to be part of Andrea's company? The Hamilton just made Forbes' list of top destination wedding venues in the country. Is that true? Mom whispered, looking at me with new eyes. I nodded. The article comes out next week. We're featured on the cover. Dad stood up suddenly, walking to the windowsill with its shrine of Marcus's achievements. He picked up my old high school photo, staring at it for a long moment. We were wrong, he said finally, his voice rough. About everything. About you. Dad, I started, but he turned, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. No, let me finish. We pushed you so hard to be like your brother, to follow the path we thought was best. But you? He gestured helplessly at my phone with its evidence of my success. You built all this while we were too blind to see it. Mom was crying now too, mascara running down her cheeks. All those times we criticized your choices are in the past. I finished for her. What matters is what we do now. Marcus stood up, straightening his tie in a gesture I recognized from childhood, his way of gathering courage. I'd like to hear more about this job offer, he said carefully. Maybe we could discuss it over lunch next week. I'd like that. I smiled, then turned back to my parents. And maybe it's time to add some new photos to that windowsill. I have a few from the Hamilton's opening gala that might work. The rest of dinner was surreal. For the first time in memory, I was the one they wanted to hear about. My mother hung on every detail about the properties, making plans to tour them all. Dad asked intelligent questions about my business strategy, nodding approvingly at my answers. As we finished dessert, Mom suddenly gasped. "Oh, for the wedding, we should use your flowers, of course. I mean, if you're not too busy with everything else." "Mom," I said gently, "I haven't personally arranged flowers in over a year. I have a team of designers for that now." "But," I smiled at Jessica, who had been so kind in my office, "I might make an exception for my future sister-in-law." Later that night, as I was leaving, Dad followed me out to my car. "Andrea," he called, his voice catching slightly. "That photo on the windowsill. Would you mind if we replaced it? Not to hide the past, but, well, I'd like people to see who you are now." I hugged him then, breathing in the familiar scent of his aftershave. "I'd like that, Dad. I'd like that a lot." As I drove home, past the darkened windows of my first little flower shop, I thought about power and success and family. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving people wrong. It's in giving them the chance to be right, to see you clearly at last. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "About that job offer, let's make it breakfast tomorrow instead of lunch. I have some ideas." I smiled, typing back a quick deal. Maybe playing with flowers wasn't such a bad career choice after all. 6 months later, I stood in the Hamilton's bridal suite, putting the finishing touches on Jessica's bouquet. I'd insisted on doing it myself, weaving white roses and orchids into a cascade that would perfectly complement her dress. "Are you sure you have time for this?" Jessica asked, watching me work. "Marcus says you're in the middle of another acquisition." I smiled, tucking in a final sprig of baby's breath. My brother talks too much these days. It was true, in the months since Marcus had joined Rose Petal Properties as CLO, he transformed from my biggest critic into my biggest champion. He'd streamlined our contracts, restructured our corporate holdings, and helped secure funding for our expansion into the corporate events market. But more importantly, he'd become the brother I'd always wanted but never had. "The Toronto deal can wait," I said, handing her the bouquet. "Today is about family." And what a change 6 months had brought to our family. Mom had thrown herself into learning about the wedding industry, volunteering to help coordinate smaller events at Brunswick Manor. She had a natural talent for it, and watching her enthusiasm was like seeing a whole new side of her. Dad had transformed too. The man who once dismissed my flower obsession now proudly showed visitors around my properties, telling anyone who would listen about his daughter's business acumen. The windowsill in our kitchen now displayed a collection of magazine covers featuring my venues, though he'd insisted on keeping that old high school photo. "To remember where we started," he'd said. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Mom peeked in, her eyes already glistening with tears. "Oh, Jessica, you look beautiful. And that bouquet. Andrea, it's perfect." "Thanks, Mom." I checked my watch. "We should head down. Marcus will be pacing a hole in the marble floor by now." The Hamilton's grand ballroom had never looked better. I commissioned a custom arch of white roses and crystal droplets that caught the afternoon light streaming through the historic windows. The guest list had doubled once word got out that the wedding would be at the Hamilton. But I'd been prepared for that. Nothing but the best for my brother's big day. As I took my place as maid of honor, I caught sight of Claire in the back, tablet in hand. She gave me a subtle thumbs up. The Toronto deal had closed. By Monday, Rose Petal Properties would be international. But that could wait. Right now, watching Marcus beam at his bride, seeing Mom dab at her eyes while Dad sat tall with pride, I realized something profound. Success wasn't just about proving people wrong. Sometimes it was about giving them the chance to be right, to grow and change alongside you. The reception was in full swing when Marcus clinked his glass for attention. "I'd like to say something about my sister," he announced, his voice carrying across the room. "Many of you know her as the owner of this magnificent venue, but I know her as the person who taught me the most important lesson of my life." He turned to face me. "Andrea, I spent years thinking I knew what success looked like. I thought it was about titles and corner offices and making partner. But you showed me that true success is about having the courage to follow your vision, even when everyone else doubts you, especially when everyone else doubts you." I felt tears threatening as he continued. "You didn't just build a business empire, you built it while giving everyone who doubted you the chance to come around, including me, especially me. And I couldn't be prouder to be your brother, your employee, and your friend." Later that night, after the last guests had departed and a cleaning crew was quietly at work, I found myself back in my little flower shop. I kept it open even after all the success, converting most of it into a high-end design studio, but maintaining a small retail space in front. It was where everything began, after all. As I locked up, my phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Toronto papers are signed. Ready to take over the world, sis. I smiled, typing back, "One flower at a time, brother. One flower at a time." Walking to my car, I passed the shop window where a simple sign still hung. Mitchell's Flowers, where dreams bloom. Below it, recently added in elegant gold lettering, a Rose Petal Properties Company. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about growing so far beyond the small box people put you in that they have no choice but to look up and admire the view. And if you're really lucky, they might just grow along with you. Looking up at the city skyline, at the buildings I now owned glowing softly in the night, I felt nothing but gratitude for the brother who learned to believe in me, the parents who learned to see me, and most of all, for that young girl who refused to give up on her dreams of playing with flowers. Not bad for a silly little flower shop. Not bad at all.